I talked to this one engineer from a major U.S. infrastructure firm, and he gave the description, which I loved, about why nature-based solutions are smarter and more resilient investments. He said, the nature-based solutions are the weakest solution the day that you plant them, or the day that you start, but they only get stronger over time. While gray infrastructure is the opposite. It's the strongest it'll ever be the day it's built, and then it only degrades from there. So again, shifting in mindset, looking at things in a broader way, I think that's the solution.
This is Talking Infrastructure, the podcast brought to you by global infrastructure consultancy AECOM. Each episode brings together a panel of experts to discuss the challenges and opportunities facing their corner of the infrastructure world. This is also the start of season 5 of the podcast, so thanks for helping us reach that milestone, and welcome to Talking Infrastructure. This episode is all about dealing with the climate crisis. We'll ask how we can make new infrastructure projects resilient, not just for 2026, but for whatever is coming our way in 2076 and beyond. We'll also ask how we can protect existing infrastructure not designed for the reality of the world we now live in. Our guests this week think about these challenges all day, every day, maybe even in their sleep. We have Marcene Mitchell, who is Senior Vice President of Climate Change at the WWF, Jane McMillan, who is Head of Sustainability at SP Energy Networks, and Sally Vivian, who is the Sustainability Advisory Growth Lead at AECOM. And I'm your host, Toby Sadler. Welcome. Marcene, I want to come to you first. WWF, I feel like you've got the climate crisis on your desk every single day. Sum up for us, if possible, what is the challenge in particular when we look at infrastructure? What are you advising people on? What is the big problem we're all facing?
So with infrastructure and climate change, we can either lock in vulnerability or we can lock in resilience. If we plan projects up front with the idea of climate and nature at the center of it, then we can end up with systems that are more reliable, more affordable, and better for both nature and people. We have to remember that we're in an historic era of infrastructure growth. 75% of all the infrastructure that will exist by the mid-century, 2050, hasn't yet even been built. We hear every day about data center consumption and how that electricity growth is going. And so we know that that's going to double in, the next, by 2030. And if you think about it, data centers alone will be consuming 945 terawatt hours, which is about what Japan uses each year. So this is huge amounts of growth in a very short period of time. So it's a challenge, but it's also this opportunity where we can pay attention and put in the resilience that we need to do so that this growth is done right. It's done with the thought of nature in mind, and it's done with helping people as well.
Okay, so big picture, big challenges. Jane McMillan, SP Energy Networks. Let's come to you next. You've got I suppose, more of a focused problem to solve. So what is it, from your perspective, that you're trying to deal with?
With respect to climate resilience of our electricity network, we need it to provide for our customers. We need it to be safe and reliable. We need to provide that supply of electricity. That is our purpose as a regulated monopoly, essentially. So we are looking to ensure that our network is future-proofed. The new network or the refurbished network that we're building right now can withstand whatever the climate may throw at it in the future. Our assets will be around for 50 to 60 years. So that's quite a significant time frame and a significant level of uncertainty as to what the climate might look like out then. And we also have existing network. So we need to look at that with the changing climate and make sure that it will provide that service to our customers going forward.
So a lot of pressure on infrastructure that is existing and is being planned in.
Yeah.
Sally, I suppose that's a good time to bring you in because your brain is being put to task, isn't it, for all of these kind of projects. when you're looking at this challenge ahead, what's top of your list in terms of things that need to be tackled?
I think from an organizational perspective, it's making sure that you understand the hazards you're exposed to, how your assets are reacting to that, how vulnerable you are, effectively doing a risk assessment so you can understand where your biggest exposures are and potentially when they might become an issue for you. Because clearly how you're exposed now is not how you might be exposed in 10, 20, 30, 40 years. It will evolve. And then helping organizations get a plan and understand their adaptation pathways that they might be able to follow so that you're doing things in an integrated, proactive manner rather than having to react to some of the horrendous climate and weather-related disasters we've seen in the last few years.
I mean, Marcene, talking about those, I suppose, climate disasters we've been having, when we look back over the last 2 years, I mean, you're in the US, so particularly thinking about the awful scenes we saw in California with the wildfires, but here in Europe as well, we've had storms in the UK, we've had power cuts in Spain and in Portugal. When you see all of this, do you just go, yeah, that's what we said was going to happen? Or is even by your standards, things are getting far worse faster than you were expecting?
Yes, well, things are going to continue. We know that the trajectory of climate, that things are going to continue. This is the first time ever in history that globally we've reached 1.5 degrees over industrial age for 3 years in a row. So we know that there's things that are baked in to the system. So it's time for us to prepare for it. California is a really good example. And in fact, we talk about the first climate bankruptcy happened in California with our utility, which, their lines sparked some of these fires in these very drought-driven, areas where they were not trimming back the growth of this dry bush. But it's more than just one company. It's a systemic issue for us because the way our utilities are paid is they're paid to build assets, right? And that's where their returns come from. They're not paid to manage forests. They're not paid to upgrade aging lines or to invest in resilience measures because they can't get a return on that. So this creates a perverse incentive. And we need to now look at our systems, look at our incentives for our utilities, and realize that we need to bake in this type of resilience into the system so that we don't have more climate bankruptcies. It's an economic issue as much as it is an environmental issue or a health and safety issue.
Yeah, and it's an interesting take to hear the WWF talking about economics as well as environment. And I suppose, Jane, is that an interesting take for you as well in terms of you're building these things that need to work for a long time to come? But of course, it's a business and also it needs to be environmentally friendly along the way. It's a tough balance to ask, isn't it, when you're building resilient infrastructure?
Yes, that's right. So an electricity network like ours needs to grow massively to support the transition to a net zero energy system. So we are having to balance that need to support the energy system towards net zero, whilst not contributing unnecessarily to climate change by building that infrastructure. And at the same time, also ensure that it's built to be resilient to whatever climate change we see. So yeah, it is a difficult balance. We have to build our network to be climate resilient and low carbon, and we have to look at our existing network and make changes to it to make it climate resilient because it wasn't built for our future climate.
Okay, before we move on to solutions, which hopefully got many solutions to these problems, Sally, is that reflected in the conversations you have with clients and potential clients who say, we're running a business, we need to make this thing work and make money, but we also need to have an understanding of the impact on the climate and make sure that we deal with those responsibilities as well?
Yes, absolutely. And I think we're starting to see some changes on that as well. I mean, absolutely, when we're talking to clients, they want to understand how they're exposed, but they also recognize that, it can be a reputational issue. and they need to have various balances. I think also in the UK, we're starting to see a bit of an evolution with Ofgem, who the regulated energy sector, as Jane's alluded to. Ofgem goes through price reviews, and they are starting to actually require certain aspects of climate resilience to be built into planning for each cycle with our energy system in the UK. So that's starting to change the philosophy on what gets done for new infrastructure. So there is almost a two-pronged approach, I suppose, for the energy infrastructure here in the UK now, is looking at new infrastructure should have climate resilience integrated into it in some form. But then we've got our old assets, which clearly need to be looked at too. And I think, as Jane also alluded to, huge amount of investment going into new infrastructure, evolving infrastructure as we work towards net zero. So we've got this brilliant opportunity now to make sure that we do bake in resilience measures to get a more adapted network.
Okay, so it's a perfect springboard there to move on. Absolutely. To talk about the future. Before we do, a quick mention to our esteemed listener. Thank you for listening to the podcast. It is, of course, important to us that we are creating the content and discussing the topics that matter to you. So we would love to hear your thoughts, as always. Take a minute to leave us some feedback in the comments wherever you are consuming this, and we might feature some of them in a future episode. Thank you for listening. But now back to our episode. Jane, I come to you because you've really laid out the challenges you face, both in terms of environmental challenges, but also regulation challenges. What is top of your list then for the sort of perfect solution, if you like, to the particular issues of climate resilience, if there is such a thing?
Yeah, that's a challenge, just one. So yeah, as Sally said there, it's our regulator is requiring us to ensure that we have fully assessed the risks to our network of climate change. We that we have then put plans in place to mitigate that risk adequately. We've got a fine balance to strike between how much money we spend on that. We have to do that resilience investment in a well-targeted way because our consumers pay. So we need to make sure that we do that efficiently and that they are paying only for what is necessary. But we have to meet the requirements of the regulator in terms of a safe and secure and reliable provision of energy. So I think the solutions are, it's a combination of engineering solutions and nature-based solutions.
You've got some pilot projects, is my understanding, that are sort of tackling that idea. Give us a sense of that and what you hope potentially can be achieved.
So we engineering solutions, I guess, are the traditional methods. They are asset by asset, and you assess the risk for a particular asset, and you usually build something in concrete, or you do something at that site to mitigate whatever the climate change related risk is. Nature-based solutions are broader than that. So they are more catchment-based, landscape-based, involve things like habitat restoration, natural flood management. They are they probably are a bit longer term, and they will involve collaboration with other landowners because they're not site specific, and we don't own the land around them. And as you said, they're in our next price control for our transmission business, which is essentially our 5-year business plan that starts in April this year. We have funding from Ofgem for 5 pilot projects, and those are on things like peatland restoration, riparian buffer zones, so along riverbanks, restoring river channels naturally, so rewiggling rivers, if you like, and all of these, whilst focused on particular assets that we have that are at risk. And we're going to be piloting these approaches to see how we can obtain what the potential benefits are, because the potential benefits, I think, are much greater. They're longer term. These approaches will protect multiple assets, not just ours. They'll protect communities. They're embedded in communities. So there's a significant amount of co-benefits as well. But there's not a lot of historic best practice to be looking at.
Okay.
So there's not a lot of learning yet that we can build on necessarily. So us and other infrastructure operators need to start actually doing this in practice to see what works.
Makes a lot of sense. Obviously, we'll take re-wiggling rivers as my phrase for the day, and see if anyone can trump that by the end of the podcast. Marcene, I think it feels natural then to come to you. That must be hugely encouraging for you to hear, an energy network operator talking in those terms, nature-based solutions and so on. I'd be interested to hear what you think is best practice in terms of those nature-based solutions, and whether in fact there's another approach you might go for.
Yeah, I mean, it's really great to hear from Sally and Jane that UK regulators are now having a mind shift in terms of recognizing that we need to put resilience and risk management into our new assets as we build them. So that's really a great step forward. Then the question becomes, well, what type of solutions, what type of protections do we use? I think Jane talked about it very well. And Jane, the gray infrastructure and the nature-based solutions. Obviously at WWF, we think that using nature, at least as a kind of a part of an integrated solution is critical, because some of the things are very simple. I mean, my example of the wildfires in in the West Coast in California, particularly, we do have the knowledge about controlled burns and clearing areas and not building. Some of this is about building into wild areas where we've never built before. So those things can be done, and they're actually fairly effective. The other area that we face a lot is on our coastal areas, and what are our coastal defense programs. Years ago, we had Hurricane Sandy, which was a huge hurricane that came across the Northeast. Where we had coastal wetlands, they prevented more than $625 million of property damage. Basically, wetlands reduce storm and flood damages by about 20% on average. So looking at natural and nature-based solutions as kind of a first step, and then seeing how that can be integrated with gray infrastructure, is that second mind change shift that we need to really address this problem. I talked to this one engineer from a major U.S. infrastructure firm, and he gave the description, which I loved, about why nature-based solutions are smarter and more resilient investments. He said, the nature-based solutions are the weakest solution the day that you plant them, or the day that you start, but they only get stronger over time. While gray infrastructure is the opposite. It's the strongest it'll ever be the day it's built, and then it only degrades from there. So again, shifting in mindset, looking at things in a broader way, I think that's the solution.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds such a nice way of describing it. And actually, I think we can all get behind that. With WWF, I know you've got a sort of playbook approach to it, and you've certainly collaborated. No, AECOM have fed into that as well. Be interested to get a sense of that before we sort of move on to Sally, of that sort of, I guess, that ability to be able to say to companies, look, we think this is the way forward. Is that something you feel you've got the power to do now, and that people are listening?
Yes, we put together, along with AECOM and the International Federation of Consulting Engineers, a playbook for nature positive infrastructure development. And it really guides engineers on how roads and bridges and ports and energy corridors can avoid nature loss, as well as build climate resilience, right? And so I think that it's trying to help mainstream nature-based solutions and biodiversity into engineering standards worldwide. Because again, as I said, the systems have to change as well, right? Mindset shift of people, changing of systems. So getting that into the engineering, because where you're the most effective is in the planning stage, when you can do it up front, right? Then with our existing infrastructure, now we have to, retrograde everything. It's much more expensive than doing it right the first time.
I imagine that is a message you would echo, Sally, and get it done in the planning stage.
Absolutely. I think some engineers might think I'm a stuck record when I'm talking, but if we don't think about the potential climate that the asset will be exposed to over its design life, and potentially longer, if we think about some of our really long-standing assets we have in the UK, if we're not designing it in, then surely we're not doing the best design. But it doesn't mean you need to. I think the idea of adaptation pathways is really important as well, in that, over the course of the lifetime of a piece of kit, that you'll have some elements of the design you'll be expecting to last 50 years. Other elements will be going through a maintenance period. So there'll be opportunities for replacement of bits and elements, maybe every 10 years, every 15 years. So you don't necessarily need to design everything in a single design to be for the whole solution. You can also think about those interim periods and those design solutions. And then as technology evolves, you have the opportunity then to take opportunity of that as well. So I think there's lots of different approaches. Absolutely, do it once rather than having to retrofit. It's a lot more cost benefit. And to Marcene's comments about costs, I read something just the other day that said that that nature-based solutions, when viewed over the whole life cycle of them, are on average 42% more cost effective than an engineered grey solution. And so who wouldn't want to do that? You can get 2 for 1.
I'm certainly persuaded here. Sadly, I have to say, very strong argument. Before we move on, I just wanted to, talk to anyone who might be listening to this, new in their career, but particularly new in the world of infrastructure, maybe looking for new opportunities, certainly with sort of purpose and impact. So here at AECOM, we're always looking for new talent to help us accelerate that progress towards net zero. And as you can hear, exciting challenges ahead. We believe harnessing those skills from across our diverse range of skills and roles and industries really is the key to progress. So even if you're wondering whether your background is a good match, you might find there is a really good role for you here. So take a look at our open roles and get in touch. And actually, just off the back of that, I'd like to plunder the expertise of our panel a touch. Marcene, I'll come to you first of all. It's not necessarily that it has to be expertise in how to get into infrastructure, but this world of tackling the climate crisis, educating people, empowering people, that's right at on your desk most days. If I was coming out of university now and thought, what, that's the world I want to get into, what would be your advice, I suppose, to someone coming into the industry now?
So this is what I tell folks from many different backgrounds, right? Whether you're an engineer going into infrastructure, whether you're an architect going to build buildings, whether you're going into city planning, invest in understanding this area of sustainability. Invest in understanding this area of resilience. Invest in understanding this area of carbon reduction. Because you can match that and you really are bringing much more value, because this is the future. We're going to have to continue to respond to these challenges and to these shocks. And if you can bring not only your technical engineering skills, but or architect skills or planning skills, but you bring it with an understanding of the challenge, an understanding of solutions to sustainability, I think that you're really, as you can see with these new regulations, you really are coming in with a more advantage, I think, than some of your colleagues that don't have that understanding, because this is what these companies and these regulators are going to be looking for.
Yeah, no, really great insight. Jane, what about yourself? It sounds like this is an actual industry where you can have a career, whereas a lot of industries can't necessarily promise that.
Yes, absolutely. And I guess my advice would be to anyone just starting out in their career, absolutely consider infrastructure. No matter what your discipline, there will be a role for you. And if you are, once you're in, sustainability is everybody's job. So as Marcene was saying there, bring your interest, bring your passion. No matter what role you're in, there will be sustainability improvements that will sit at your door. Contact the sustainability team, do all the relevant training. It's provided in-house, but you can sit in any role in a company and make a difference, and make the company more sustainable.
Makes a lot of sense. And Sally, obviously, if they come to AECOM, they have the pleasure of working with you. Any other benefits?
Lots of benefits. I mean, I learn something every day, whether it be from the clients we work with or the projects we do. And that ability to always develop yourself, I think, is just brilliant in a career. But advice for sort of colleagues starting out, be curious, ask questions, ask why. And also recognize that the courses that some of our new entrants have done in university now already talk a little bit about sustainability, climate change, doing things differently. So they might well have been taught different approaches that they can introduce to projects and talk about with their peers. None of us have solved the problems that we're now talking about. So everybody around the table to have a voice and ask questions and apply some thinking.
Great. That's really useful. I think, honestly, it's one of those things that when you're young and coming into a job, having three experts provide their guidance, I think is invaluable. So thank you so much for that. But Marcene, I think actually really nice to come back to you there talking about those kind of careers, and everyone in the room here is essentially persuaded. We're on the same hymn sheet, if you like. Who do we need to persuade? Who do we still need to get across the line to make all this work? Is this central governments? Is it, other NGOs? Is it construction companies? Who is it needs to hear what we're saying?
I guess the answer is all of the above. It's nice to see there is an evolution in thinking, as Jane and Sally had pointed out earlier, but those are pretty, first movers, I would say. There's a lot of folks, particularly in utilities, which is a very, staid industry. And in the North, we haven't seen this type of rise in electricity demand, for example, in people's working lifetimes. In general, electricity demand has been flat or gone down. So addressing this type of need with this type of growth in speed, people really need to be educated on, what they can do in terms of resilience and building these systems in a way that don't repeat the mistakes of the past. Our politicians as well are probably not the most educated on these areas. And so we need to bring that to them. And then, as I said, as we all just pointed out, our rising generation. This is an opportunity to educate our rising generation so that they come in with the knowledge and the tools. And I would say that they're very open to it. This generation, more than any other generation, has already felt the impacts of climate, are already seeing it and want to do something, want to be part of the solution. So this is for the future. That's where we really need to focus as well.
Marcy, thank you for giving us that take on it. I wonder, Jane, then for your perspective, who you need to influence, but also I guess you're already having people kind of control things with Ofgem, et cetera, giving you guidelines, giving you boundaries to hit. But who else do you need to get on board?
Yeah, so I guess for nature-based solutions to climate resilience in particular, these are very challenging to deliver because they're not your traditional engineering project on a site that we own and that we understand and have the technical and engineering capability to deal with. There have to be collaborations. It'll be on land that we don't necessarily own, multiple stakeholders. So the challenges that we are starting to face as we implement these pilots include how do we get land access, regulatory uncertainty. These are long-term commitments. How do we deal with that? They're novel projects, innovative projects. So there's associated challenges with that. And even the ecological and climate uncertainties. But I think the main challenges are about the system that we operate in rather than the technical feasibility of delivering the project. So it's how, and Marcene covered this at a kind of higher level, but it's about policies and planning and how governments and local authorities can facilitate these projects to happen. links to land use strategies, climate adaptation strategies, spatial planning, infrastructure planning, and the long-term funding and maintenance side of things also needs to be considered. Arrangements can be put in place. Community management, communities are very important. Partnerships with different types of organisations that we as a company might not be used to partnering with. How can landowners be incentivised to participate in these projects? And how can that cross-sector working and collaboration be coordinated? And what kind of delivery mechanisms do we need? So those are the kind of challenges I expect that we will get right into when we actually start these 5 pilots.
So what I'll do then, I think, to finish up is to sort of throw a demand to look into your crystal balls, if you like. Sally, I come to you. If we're now talking in, do my maths, 2046 or 2056, and we're looking back, what needs to have gone right? Because as Marcene's saying, the demand for electricity is insane at the moment. AI is only going one way, and we don't quite know what it's going to get to, but that demand is going to increase. So for you, next 20 or 30 years, when we speak again, what needs to have gone right?
We need to have done things differently. And I think we've all spoken about this for a bit, that business as usual as we know it now, is not going to solve what we need to do. I think one of the big things that really needs to happen is collaboration and thinking outside the box. And Jane's already spoken quite a bit about the pilots they're looking at doing, the innovation, but it's also about the fact that our infrastructure now is so complex that every bit of it is integrated with every other bit of it. So you can't just look at solutions in the energy sector, the telecoms. We all rely upon each other bit, and we all know what happens when there's a flood and maybe a substation goes out of operation. It affects everything. So I think it's making sure that we're really thinking outside that box, collaborating not within just our sectors, but really thinking broadly about the complex integration that we have, that our infrastructure now is. It's a very complex system, and we really need to make sure we don't forget that.
Okay, thank you for that. Jane, I'll come to you next. I want to sort of finish with Marcene, because I feel like the WWF have got that sort of bigger overview that I think we might want to finish up with. So, Jane, your thoughts looking to the future as if you were looking back.
As Sally has said there, our infrastructure from now on has been designed to be climate resilient, to be low carbon, but that there has been that kind of shift towards, at a very high level, I guess, nature is a critical infrastructure asset itself. And so anything that we do that impacts on or relies on nature needs to have been planned and delivered and understood in that context. So I think it's and Sally did kind of allude to it as well. It's that we've changed how we do things. We're much more collaborative. We're place-based. And we've got that big picture. Everything's joined up. Everything's naturally joined up. So all of our decision making and our infrastructure as it's built is designed and planned on that basis.
Great, thank you. So Marcene, same to you. I guess just coming off the back of that, we're talking collaboration and significant small amount of concrete.
Yes. I mean, I'd love to give the +1 to both Jane and Sally on their points about collaboration and how Jane explained in her own work how important, once you get into nature-based solutions, it's not just one company doing it in their own footprint, but it really is stretching out to the community, to other landholders. So +1 is collaboration and really looking at this as not just individual companies doing work, but really communities being part of that, right? I think the second point is what I referred to earlier was that shift in mindset. We need a shift in mindset that reflects a broader cultural shift toward integrating ecological and financial logic into national infrastructure policy. We need to look at things differently from the start. That's going to be the biggest shift because we have really the technological capability. We know what solutions are. We can go back into our past actually and pull out some of the wisdom of our ancestors about things that can do in terms of nature. But what we need to do is to upgrade our mindset and how we look at it, thinking about things in a way that's more circular, right? How do we continue to have that loop versus just extract and use and dispose of? Thinking of ways that we are engaging our communities in more communal wisdom. Lots of people have solutions, not just those of us who are sitting in these companies. So if we do that right, I think we really have, kind of a brave new world in front of us, and there's no limits. I think we can really work together and bringing in nature, ecological benefits to our communities, and have stronger companies and stronger outputs at the end of the day.
That's great, Marcene. I feel fired up and optimistic. So it's a great place to end the main bulk of the podcast. For regular listeners, you'll know we'll have a little section at the end, the AECOM takeaway, where myself and the AECOM guest, so Sally Vivian in this case, will just be reflecting on what we've heard. But for now, Marcene Mitchell, Senior Vice President of Climate Change at the WWF, and Jane McMillan, who is Head of Sustainability at SP Energy Network. Thank you both so much for your contribution.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Well, thanks for sticking with us. Welcome to the AECOM Takeaway. This is where our AECOM guest has a chance to reflect on the conversation and give their thoughts. So a reminder, we're joined this week by Sally Vivian, who is the Sustainability Advisory Growth Lead at AECOM. So I thought really interesting conversation we had there. Lots of talk there about nature-based solutions, lots of pilots, lots of things in the offing. I wonder whether you've got some evidence, I suppose, to back up the proof of that and prove that those sort of systems do actually work for us.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's really important, isn't it? I think one project that comes to mind is, it's got a bit of a long title, but the Mansfield Sustainable Flood Resilience Project. So it's one of the largest UK urban climate adaptation projects, effectively over 20,000 sort of interventions, benefits about 90,000 residents in the Mansfield area. You might be surprised to hear. It has been completed. Then when we had storms Bebet and Gerrit during 23-24, had solutions that were demonstrated to have protected communities in known flood hotspots. So it actually stopped the flooding that would have been expected to have occurred during those storms. And I think the real evidence of its success is that the Mansfield style approach is now mandated for new developments, and that started in 2024. So that's a great example, I think, where a nature-based solution has been proven and is now being advocated for something that should be done in similar developments moving forward.
For people who've not come across that, the way it works is you tell me, but it's a question of removing a lot of concrete piping and instead having places of nature that can absorb the water, slow down the passage of water, that sort of thing. I mean, you're the expert, you tell me.
Yeah, I mean, it's sustainable urban drainage schemes, or SUDs. Make sure we don't, it would be replacing an area of concrete with an area of grass, wetlands, flowers. So you also get some of the biodiversity benefits, but you then get natural infiltration. It might be adding in an area which can naturally flood, such as something will go to a natural pond. So it's about actually integrating that our nature, rather than creating a lot of concrete, which rain just rolls off. And that's what causes a lot of our floods.
Yeah, also just makes it a nicer place to live in as well, which is great. So what I thought when I was listening to the three of you, apart from obviously being in awe of the insights that were coming, was this is not about one organization taking on the baton and doing it on their own. It's everybody has to work together, but also that because some people have got some great ideas, it's about sharing insights. I wonder whether you could just give me your thoughts on that. I assume you agree with the point, but whether you feel that is all up and running as it should be, that all this sharing and collaboration is kind of happening as you would want.
I think we can always share and collaborate more. I mean, I absolutely agree with the point. And I think it is absolutely critical. And I think it's one of the things I've thought for some time is that when tackling adaptation, it isn't just about engineering things differently or doing nature-based solutions, as Jane spoke so eloquently about, but it's also our business models need to change. And I think, Jane talked about the fact of how they're having to engage with different parties to enable nature-based solutions. And I think the real success that we're going to get from it is people recognizing business as usual, it doesn't work. Different business models are required. That means we actually need to understand how different parties think and what their contexts are and what their red lines are to know how we can collaborate with them properly. So I think there's a huge amount of learning to go on that. And that's one of the things I really hope we see out of the pilots and the great projects that are happening, is that people can share where they did well, but also where they had challenges and how they overcame challenges, because that's going to really help us with making the case for more nature-based solutions and other adaptation type approaches to get funding and take those forward too.
Sally, thank you so much. A great and positive way to end the podcast. So thank you so much for that. So Sally Vivian, who is the Sustainability Advisory Growth Lead at AECOM. If you enjoyed the podcast, then please like, subscribe, leave a review, tell your friends and colleagues, and of course, feel free to plug it on social media. Until next time, thank you very much and goodbye.